a strong campaigner and supporter for democracy. Mr. Guterres is not somebody who is unfamiliar both with Kenya and the region. I had the pleasure of meeting him in his new capacity as Secretary General in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, in January of this year, where once again he showed himself willing to listen to Kenya's point of view, but not just Kenya's, that of Africa too. So therefore we're pleased to have a man of experience and vision at the helm of the United Nations, and I'm sure that this initial official visit to Kenya, and as I said, not his first, he's been here in different capacities in the past, will further deepen the partnership between Kenya and the United Nations. I'm pleased that during this visit, the Secretary General will also visit Dadaab, home to an estimated 400,000 refugees. Our policy has been clear for some time. The events that led to the establishment of Dadaab are terribly tragic, and the best response to that tragedy is to help the refugees to return and rebuild their nation. And that is Kenya's policy and our efforts to hasten the repatriation and resettlement of refugees. But as always, these efforts shall remain guided by relevant domestic and international laws. Indeed, on the 25th of March, we shall be hosting an extraordinary summit, bringing together IGAD heads of state and government, as well as friends and partners of the region, to discuss durable solutions to the plight of Somali refugees. Kenya will host this Heads of State Summit in Nairobi on the 25th of March, 2017, and I hope, Mr. Secretary General, you may find time to join in this discussion and to seek a lasting answer to this critical problem. For us, the conference shows that Kenya is willing to consult and ready to listen to the views of those who wish Somalia and indeed our entire region well. Let me say once again that the Secretary General is one of those really ready to listen. He was quick to reassure and to assure the international community would work with us to help Somali refugees, and I was very encouraged also by the support that the Secretary General gave in the matter of the African Union mission in Somalia, AMISOM. We believe that if strengthened appropriately, then we will end completely the threat posed by Al-Shabaab. Appropriately, then we will end completely the threat posed by Al-Shabaab to Somalia and our region. We've also had the opportunity to discuss other regional issues with regard to South Sudan, Burundi, and DRC, where we have pledged to continue to work together to stabilize the situation in those countries. The fact of the matter is that the Secretary General's passion for multilateral work matches our own enthusiasm for collaborative answers to the problems and challenges that still trouble our region and our continent. A clear sign of that commitment is the Secretary General's reaffirmation of the vital place of UNEP, Habitat, and UNON as key institutions in the global South. These institutions have important work to do. There is the Paris Climate Agreement we need to work on. There are the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the new Urban Agenda Agreement. There is serious work to be done by these institutions, work which touches everyone on earth and that is why we are so glad that the Secretary General has reaffirmed their importance and indeed agreed that the financial and management challenges affecting habitat in particular will be addressed within the new framework. Equally, the government of Kenya and the United Nations in Kenya are working with the United Nations Development Assistance Framework, better known as UNDAF, which has become a strategic tool to achieve the SDGs. I personally have presided over the United Nations Development Assistance Framework annual review for 2 years running, and I am happy to note that this is strong evidence of partnership established between the UN country team and my administration. I am encouraged that the UN family in Kenya is working on systems and strategic ways to help us realize the SDGs. For example, in supporting Kenya's roadmap for SDG localization and adapting the newly signed 2-year joint work plans on SDGs, the UN assistance to county governments and assisting them in revising their county integrated development plans, and several other initiatives, including the UN health coverage, as well as our border programs with Ethiopia, which I am confident will be further deepened and enhanced within Kenya. The Secretary General also is in Kenya on an important day, Women's Day, and we wish to acknowledge his presence here on this most important day, and also to assure him of Kenya's support for this agenda, and that we as a country will continue to do everything that we can to ensure greater inclusivity, both at the political, social, and developmental levels, because we believe strongly that by engaging and ensuring that women count us, Secretary General, and count on us and our full support on this agenda. As I close, I want to thank you for supporting my government in addressing the drought situation in Kenya, which has been declared a national drought emergency. The UN, together with the Red Cross and other partners, are working hand in hand to respond to the drought situation, and we truly appreciate all the assistance and support that you have been able to give us. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank the Secretary General for this visit and to reiterate once again Kenya's total commitment to working together with him and the entire United Nations family to achieve the SDGs and to achieve global peace and security for all. I thank you, and I give you this opportunity, Secretary General, to make a few remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for your kind words. This has been an extremely positive visit, and our discussions have been extremely constructive, and I would say they have allowed us to express a common perspective in relation to to all the problems that Kenya and the international community are facing today. I believe the narrative of the UN about Africa has not always been the right one. Sometimes it's too much concentrated on crises. It's true there are crises in Africa, there are crises in Europe, there are crises in Asia, there are crises everywhere. But Africa must be seen more and more as a land of achievement and opportunity. And no country like Kenya is the symbol of that achievement and that opportunity.
Thank you.
Not only because of its governance capacity, but because of its vibrant civil society, its business community, its free press. Kenya is an example in all aspects that can be copied not only in the African continent but around the world, proving that in today's international community there are countries that are moving in order to make sure that the 3 pillars of the UN activity can be fully met: peace and security, sustainable and inclusive development, and human rights. Now, I want to express to the Kenyan government and to the Kenyan people my full solidarity in relation to the drought that is affecting the country. And I hope the international community will be able to match the generosity Kenyans have always shown, namely in relation to refugees, and support the country now that this drought has been prolonged in such a way that, of course, the resources of the country are themselves in difficulties to face this enormous challenge. At the same time, to say that we fully appreciate the excellent cooperation that exists between the government of Kenya and our UN country team. Our UN country team is here to support the government of Kenya in relation to the objectives defined by the government of Kenya for achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals and for making sure that an inclusive process strengthens the Kenyan capacity to face all challenges of the modern times. At the same time, we are very grateful for the generosity with which Kenya has supported our office in Nairobi, a central pillar of the UN international presence, which we intend to fully support and to fully use in its capacity to help also all the other activities that we have across the continent and further afield. I also want to express my deep respect and deep gratitude for what has been the Kenyan commitment both to peacekeeping and to peace enforcing in the case of Somalia. Kenyan forces have played a very important role that I would like to underline here publicly and to express our deep gratitude and respect. And in relation to Somalia, I came from Somalia yesterday. I think that we need to also to look into Somalia as a land in which there is an opportunity. With the new leadership that was elected, with the improved security situation in the country, even if a lot of challenges still remain, this is the moment for the international community to massively invest in Somalia. First of all, addressing the tragedy of the drought. People are dying. This must stop. The international community must act now, must be mobilized to support the Somali people in this very difficult situation. But this is also the moment to support the government to build capacity, to collect taxes, to develop its own security architecture, to guarantee that there is a state functioning in Somalia, and at the same time, the moment for the international community to be more clear in the support to AMISOM, to the force of the African Union that has been an extremely important element in the fight against terrorism and in creating the conditions for the government to progressively extend its capacity in the country. AMISOM needs to have predictable funding and needs to have support in the development of its capacities in order to be able to fully meet its objectives of fighting terrorism and creating the conditions for a future for Somalia. I came hopeful from Somalia. I hope the international community will be able to match that hope with enhanced engagement, enhanced commitment, and enhanced support. And I also want to underline that we had full agreement in relation to the analysis of situations like the one in South Sudan or Burundi and DRC. And I must express my deep personal appreciation for what President Kenyatta has done in support to the peace process in South Sudan in creating the conditions for the agreement to be established. We are still not yet there in the full implementation of the agreements, the peace agreements. We still have a lot of challenges, but we will be working together to make sure that those challenges are overcome. On the other hand, our cooperation in all other aspects is exemplary, and I want to underline how positively impressed I'm coming from this visit to Kenya, knowing that Kenya will be a very strong supporter of multilateralism and of the activities of the UN. As you said, Mr. President, this is also Women's Day. I have lived in my past capacity as High Commissioner for Refugees of women.
All right, events taking place at State House here in Nairobi. Antonio Guterres, who's the Secretary General of the United Nations there, just concluded talking about part of the discussions that he's had with President Uhuru Kenyatta at State House, Nairobi. Of course, talking about Africa really now, the need for Africa really to be seen through the lens of opportunity, and also really praising Kenya as one of the best examples in really all aspects, be it the economy, be it freedom of of the press, among other issues. He says that Kenya really is at the helm of being at the top of some of the countries really that has made great strides in Africa in different aspects. Of course, he talked about, very importantly, Somalia. He says he's just come from Somalia, and there is really need for the international community to come in and mobilize support, especially for the newly installed president, Farmajo there, saying that Somalia really is a country that could have immense opportunity if supported and if given the right attention for it. Really, it's a country that could really prosper. Also, he talked about the drought situation right here at home, talking about, asking really different stakeholders from other countries really to come in and support Kenya, especially in some of the famine ravaged places or regions here in the country. President Uhuru Kenyatta obviously also talked about the refugee situation, talking about that extraordinary summit that is going to be held on the 25th of January, of March this year. That's in a few days, really, to talk about the refugee crisis, the refugee situation, the plight of refugees who are coming in from places like South Sudan, Somalia, among others, where there is war or uncertainty. Really, he really had a conciliatory tone in regards to refugees. Remember that last year the government really came out as really harsh on refugees, asking that about 600,000 of them go back to their countries. But then today, President Uhuru Kenyatta really reaffirming Kenya's commitment to the plight of refugees. He also talked about, the discussions to do with other regions, including South Sudan, the war in South Sudan, also considering Burundi and the DRC. So those really are some of the remarks that were made by the President and the UN Secretary General. Remember that he is the 9th Secretary General. This is his first official visit to the country, though he has had other visits to the country before he was installed as UN Secretary General. All right, so that concludes our first